So, welcome. We're going to be doing chapter 2 this week, and we'll start with a relevant meditation for this content. So, go ahead and make yourselves comfortable. And allow yourself to arrive in this moment. Find yourself in this moment in your chair. And we're going to engage a thought experiment. And just for a few minutes, suppose that there's no past and no future. And what this helps to do is it gives the opportunity to the mind to stop referring to what came before or what might come after. So if we just suppose that there's no past and no future, just for now, allow all of those ideas to fall away. Inviting the mind to be empty of images, memories, stories of childhood, growing up, earlier years, and even yesterday. Just for now, let all of that content fall away. And same with the future. Just suppose that there is no future. And again, simply to allow the mind to stop referring to images and ideas other than now. So just suppose that there's nothing, there's no timeline that goes forward. There's just now. So allow ideas of what I want for tomorrow, or what next year is going to be like, or all of that. Let it fall away. And allow mind to be gently and effortlessly empty of the time dimension. Now is where we are. Now is when we are. And let's do the same thing with the space dimension. So just for now, engage the thought experiment that there is no other place. There's no external world. There's no out there. And just gently and as effortlessly as you can, let ideas and images of any other place just fall away. Again, just for now. So the mind has nothing to refer to other than here, now. And what's so helpful about this is then now we get to find what's left. When all of the contents of mind are empty, what is it that remains? I invite you to get in touch with the spaciousness, the quality of spaciousness that's here when mind is still and empty. And I invite you to get in touch with the quality of sufficiency or not requiring anything. Notice how this space doesn't require anything. It's already inherently fulfilled. I invite you to notice how this fulfilled space is not being created right now. It was already here. And it's just that normally the contents of our mind cover over or obscure our experience of this space. So notice how it's ever present. Now I invite you to notice how thoughts come and go, the mind moves, and this space remains unimpacted. So notice how it's unconditional. No matter what the mind does or says, this space remains ever present, not requiring anything, not dependent upon experience. And just rest into this space and just see what else you notice. What else is it like to be with this spaciousness? Now let's take a couple of deep breaths into a soft belly. And I invite shares if there's anything relevant that you'd like to share about your experience of the meditation, and no pressure. If there's nothing to share, we can get into the reading. Hi, friends. Aaron.
It apparently takes a lot of effort to keep the space empty for me. It's really magnetized. The mind is magnetized to refill itself or something. That's what I noticed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was very pleasant to be in the spacious quality.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were able to contact the spaciousness, but just not stay there. Yeah. Yeah, Amanda.
I was noticing as I was letting go of time and letting go of space, how relaxed my body became. And I realized, well, I guess what I associate is the tension that is stored in my body in relation to my thoughts about time and space, or my reference point within what I think is time and space.
Yeah.
I feel really relaxed now. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate that noticing of the tension and the relaxation. That's something that I have heard about from a number of different mystics, pointing the way that there's often one of the sort of final senses of self that keeps us identified with the body is a sense of tension that we identify as, oh, that's me. That feeling of tension is me. And that's kind of one of the final ones to break. I don't know. I haven't found that necessarily myself, but that's intriguing to me. Like, ooh, what's that tension thing?
I think that tension can be felt as a boredom, as like this indescribable thing that we put stuff over. It's only once that tension then also releases that the spaciousness becomes ...
I find it, such a paradox that letting go is also efforting at the same time. So there's this push and pull between the relaxation and then the efforting I keep picturing like, I want to give my ego a job, like I make it a shepherd. All my thoughts are the sheep, just.
Yeah.
And then I come back to like, what is better than right now? Nothing, but it's effortful least in my body temple, to keep that place of effortless mindfulness.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how this material points to the effortlessness of it, that like the I am is always there without any effort. And then just sort of orienting to that and realizing, oh yeah, there it is again. Oh, it's still, can't get rid of that thing. Oh, right. It is effortless. And, you know, like it can be a sort of a paradox of both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit like letting go of the steering wheel that you've been holding onto for too long. It doesn't take any effort to let go, but
Yeah.
the hands keep wanting to grip back on.
Right. There can be some resistance to the letting go.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, let's connect it to the reading. So, anybody want to read the first section before the 3 asterisks? Chapter 2, Our Naked Being.
Can read
Thanks.
Chapter 2, Our Naked Being. The essence of anything is that which cannot be separated from it. No thought, image, feeling, sensation, perception, activity, or relationship is essential to us, just as no movie is integral to the screen on which it appears. Experiences, like movies, come and go. Our essential self, however, never appears or disappears. It is ever present and unchanging. It is the one constant factor in all changing experience. When we are divested of the qualities and limitations we acquire from experience, only that which is intrinsic to us, our naked, unconditioned being, remains. In fact, we cannot even call it our being, for without limitations, it is no longer colored by the characteristics of a person. It is our innermost essence and is, at the same time, utterly impersonal, intimate, impersonal, infinite being. Being is not a quality or an attribute belonging to a person. A person is a temporary name and form of intimate, impersonal, infinite being. It is this impersonal, infinite being that shines in each of us as the sense of being myself, before it is qualified by experience. Divested of the qualities it inherits from experience, being is infinite, perfect, whole, and indivisible, and all people, animals, and things borrow their apparently independent existence from it. This unity of being shines in each of our minds as the sense of being myself, or the knowledge I am. It shines in the world as the isness of things. The recognition of our shared being is the experience of love in relation to people and animals, and beauty in relation to objects and the world.
Let's just be with that for a moment. And let's open it up. What do you notice? What do you want to talk about?
Sorry, I unmuted myself. Forgot. In the first paragraph, the no thought, image, feeling, sensation, perception, activity or relationship is essential to us. So we live on the earth plane where all those things are essential to our experience here on earth, yet they are not essential. I guess I've been unpacking paradoxes in this book, and I find that I've never quite chewed on that one thought before.
Yeah.
That none of these things are essential, but we live in a world where it seems all of them are essential. And I like how Spira uses the metaphor of a movie projector. So I was kind of coming back and forth in this chapter to myself as the projector, and then you can put a movie on a wall, on a screen, or anything, and all those things don't necessarily change the movie, but the projector remains the I am. So I was kind of looking at what the projector puts out there as all of these things that we perceive as integral to our experience in this body form, this body temple. But peeling all of that away, it's just, like he says, it's our naked being.
Yeah.
And that's enough, that's everything. So we put so much stock into what we consider essential experiences and relationships and on earth. But it comes back, he just drives home the point that nothing is essential to the being that we are. We're inherently divine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing he says too is all these things come and go. So I sort of thought about how our beliefs change throughout our life. And I kind of look, the middle of the word belief is the word LIE. They can be lies to ourselves, but yet, anyway, we take it all down to the very marrow. I am that. My essential self.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the way that he's using essential is kind of like the way that I was saying ever present, like it's whatever doesn't ever leave, and so yeah, like we're constantly bombarded by experiences, and experiences are constantly changing, like I'm having this feeling, now I'm having that feeling, I'm looking at this thing, now I'm looking at that thing, I have a sensation of my chair on my elbow, but now I have the sensation of the pin in my hand, like all of it, the experiences are constantly changing. That even though there is always experience, any experience comes to pass. It's constantly changing. So there's not any one experience that would be essential to us, that would be ever present. And that's, yeah, I love that point, just how simple that is. What is it that doesn't ever change about who and what I am? One of the things that stands out to me that he doesn't go into in this chapter very much, but just refers to, but I've heard him in talks refer to a little more, is that last paragraph. He says the recognition of our shared being is the experience of love in relation to people and animals, and beauty in relation to objects and the world. So like that's sort of his definition and his explanation of when we're experiencing love, that's what I'm in touch with. I'm experiencing directly my shared being with you. And when I look out into the world and I experience beauty, what I'm experiencing is my shared being, my shared beingness with, with the natural world, for instance. Like, oh, that's what that experience is. And that really resonates for me. I like that point. Like those, and that those experiences of love and beauty are in some way inherent to us, because the shared beingness is inherent to us. It is part of our essence. I really appreciate that. And it can get covered over by other experiences and we can lose track of it, but it's not ever gone. It just gets eclipsed, but it's always there and we can return to it.
Yeah, can I say a thing? Just
Yeah,
following
please.
up on that. Yeah, just so two paragraphs before that. So the one you just read seems to build on where he reads, divested of the qualities it inherits from experience, being is infinite, perfect, whole, and indivisible. And all people, animals, and things borrow their apparently independent existence from it. Yeah, so just like putting those two paragraphs together, I can just really see how, and hearing your comment, BJ, like how like that's what's happening right now. Like the sort of like true substance of what we are is like the same thing. And then we get lost in all the contents of what each of us independently experience. But like to remember that, or to have the experience of like coming back in contact with like, oh, wait a second, I'm made of the same stuff, is like, I guess is what he would call love, is
Right.
to kind of like, is to I guess either through practicing consciously emptying our awareness from its normal content, to like become so aware of the being, and then maybe noticing, like doing that in relation to other, is how we experience love. It seems like, I'm curious, BJ, to hear from you or anyone else who has a example of this. It sounded like you, when you mentioned that paragraph, that you have that experience, or you have had that experience, like you resonate with his definition of love. I'm just curious to hear anyone's experience with feeling that, being in contact with that, oh, recognition of shared being.
Yeah, William, go ahead.
With paragraphs like this said in this manner, pointing to a certain thing, I sometimes find it interesting to swap out the word love, and probably beauty in this case as well, with truth, and read it.
Should we try that? Are you suggesting to try that?
You're welcome to. I try not to talk too much with these things, because I end up just dressing up my thoughts in a thing and sending it around a China shop to break things. But I do, when I encounter somebody speaking of love and experience and essential being, something that's very close to me is the idea that love is synonymous with truth, capital T. And when I plug capital T truth into statements that are of an essential nature such as this, they read well.
Yeah, that resonates
That
for
doesn't
me.
mean that'll work throughout the whole thing, but this paragraph, it does something for me. It works.
Yeah, Yeah, I appreciate that.
That resonates for me too, William.
Yeah. There's a quote in Course in Miracles that reminds me of that last paragraph that you were discussing, BJ. There are no separate thoughts. In the world. There are no separate thoughts. Everything is a shared experience through the one infinite creator. So I like the idea of you mentioning, Aaron, or what somebody did, of borrowing. Our experience is like borrowing from the one whole. But I like, they really drill down in ACIM that we are not separate beings. There are no separate thoughts, period. And I thought about that early on, and I thought that anyway, that paragraph just reminded me of that statement.
Yeah.
You know, the Hermetic principles come to mind as well. As within, so without.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, another thing that comes up for me related to the paragraph that you read, Aaron, about borrowing our apparently independent existence. There's something that I've heard a few different times over the years from various mystics of like the sense of self is more our essence, what we are, right? That's the I am, or one way to call it is the I am. And there's a way that the sense of self becomes magnetized towards body, and that often happens in the first few months of life. You know, there'll be a baby who's aware, but isn't aware of the body. You know, it isn't the body yet. And then at some point along the way, you know, and it often kind of corresponds somewhere around like learning words and concepts. Once there's an idea of I, then the I am becomes something like magnetically attracted or attached to the body. And then there's like, oh, I, oh, me, baby, BJ, you know, whoa. And then, and the self as the body didn't exist before that, you know, so that I think there is some direct, literal truth to the individual, seemingly limited, separate self does borrow its existence from the sense of self. And the sense of self, the I am, can, you know, does exist independent of identification with experience, form, feeling. And what we're often doing is loaning that sense of self, which is inherent to what we are, to those experiences. And that's part of what we're interested in, you know, that I think that's part of the creator's interest, is to seem as though there is limited, you know, I am this body and I am having this experience and this feeling. And that's exciting. We're here for the adventure of it. And also that's where suffering exists, because in some way it's not inherently true. It is the illusion. It only seems as though I'm this body and I'm having this experience. So that's, yeah, just super fascinating to me, that I think on some metaphysical level that it's like literally true that we borrow our apparently independent existence from infinite being. Super fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think, like, to bring it back to the question that you brought up, Aaron, about the, like, do we have that experience of love? Like, yeah, that really resonates for me. I think the experience of love really feels like it corresponds to shared being. And like vice versa, when I'm feeling as though someone is separate from me, it's a lot harder to experience love. Like, that's a being over there and I'm over here. Like, it cuts off the experience of love in my experience. And I think also that, like, babies, for instance, often are really connected. Maybe not always, I think every baby has a different experience, but say before that awareness of the I comes in, I imagine a lot of babies are automatically, just inherently connected to that experience of love. And then we go into the individual, isolated, separate experience, and then we can return to love. And I think it's really fascinating that we go through this, sort of unconditioned, conditioned, returning to unconditioned experience. And I think that's really part of the plan. Like, we're supposed to believe in the separation, it's like, it's built that way, that like sort of magnetic attraction to the body. We're supposed to identify in a way so that we can then make the choice to which way do we want to polarize. We're supposed to get convinced by the illusion. I find that super fascinating.
Yeah.
Any other comments about all this before we read the next section? Amanda.
Yeah, I just had one thing that I thought was pretty interesting was at the top of page 12, that the first one, it says, it is our innermost, oh, kitty cats. Okay. It is our innermost essence and is at the same time utterly impersonal, intimate, impersonal, infinite being. And I realized that I got a little like hung up on this idea of it being intimate and impersonal. And
Right.
I just struck me as and I think it's because I see intimate and impersonal. There's something in that feels almost like they're at odds with one another. So and the more I was just like, like just taking it all in, like it gelled for me. But I thought it's like, yeah, usually like intimacy, when I experience intimacy on any level with somebody, it feels really personal. Like,
Yeah.
it's like you're the one, and then really personal, so, but I love it. I love like it also being impersonal. Like, it's not, it's like not so much like, oh, I love you. It's more of like, we are experiencing love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
William. Yeah. What do you make of that?
When I read intimate, impersonal, I feel intimate as it's just right here. It's a closeness, like a focal point of awareness. Like it's not emotional. It's more of a like the air being very close. The awareness is very intimate. Maybe.
Yeah. Something I make of it too is like that it's not the beingness is not form identified. And I think personal, if you just kind of break down that word, it's personal, the person, the body identification. And I think we're really used to, we're habituated to thinking of this experience as body identified. Yeah, so that's something that I feel like he's pointing to as well. Like, it's impersonal because it's not identified with form. It's not, there is an experience of I But the I is awareness, and the I is space. And what is that? What is that? What is it like to be that I that isn't identified as form? Totally fascinating, impersonal. Wow. Yeah. And I'm kind of like holding myself back because I could just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk about like how excited I am about this.
Yeah.
Because like his teachings are so packed. Like just that word impersonal. He could write a book about just that word. And like there, like so much about what he writes about. Like I've been tracking these down, this kind of information down for years from like various different mystics. And then he just like crystallizes it in like impersonal, he's like one word. It's like,
Yeah.
wow. So, yeah. Aaron.
I love how excited you are about this. That's the first thing. The second thing is, William, I was feeling you on the intimate being kind of like a close space, kind of a spatial analogy. I was feeling you on that. And then Amanda, when you said about the little thing that came up for you about the contrast between intimate and impersonal, I was feeling you too. And what came up for me, and I hope this isn't too far afield, but in studying Ra, when they talk about the final step of consciousness in the whole journey through the octave, through the galaxy, in the seventh density, we completely let go of all sense of identity, personal identity, and just fall back into the creator, into the infinite, forever, boundless identity of the one. And I have this dual experience. I often have this dual experience when I conceive of that, moment or whatever. That's like, it has a contrast in it too, where it's like, it sounds amazing and like the absolute thing that I want, and it also sounds terrifying and horrible. It's like at the same time, I'm like, wait a second, I don't want to, but I kind of want that. Oh, I don't know if I want that. It's like this contrast of like how edgy it is to like imagine not being a person anymore, not having any identity of my own.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what came up for me when I was thinking about your share.
I totally relate to that, Aaron.
I figure you have many, 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 we all have many, many lifetimes to prepare for that. And we'll want that at that time. When we get to that timeline, it's like go time.
It's appropriate to not want it yet. We're still.
That's right.
Right. Exactly. You have to appreciate each timeline as it appears, but it's a beautiful cycle. To me, it's a beautiful picture of the oneness. We came from source and we go back to source.
Yeah. Well, I imagine like for students of Rupert, like for students of this kind of direct path, this kind of like, we'll just get right to it. Like, what are we and what's going on here? I think it's pretty rare, but I think there are some souls who will just choose to do that, to just go ahead and complete the journey. Like, and it's available apparently. Like, you don't actually have to go through the rest of the densities. You can just skip right out from here and realize your oneness all the way and just like complete the octave in one lifetime.
Yeah.
I don't think it happens very often, but I guess that's possible.
If you know how to skip.
Yeah. Well, I think
like the idea of it sounds simple, but
yeah. Well, my thought about these teachings, like this is a lot of it, getting in touch with the essential self can, there's like if we become identified, I think there's so much work to do, because then there's like, then there's forgiveness work, and then there's healing work, and then there's this and that. And like, when we realize that the truth and I'm not identified, there's nothing to forgive. There's nothing to heal, like, so we can become invested and go in and do the work. And that's amazing and beautiful, because then I'm going to love the people and I'm going to accidentally hurt the people and I'm going to forgive the people and have them forgive me and do the healing. And it's amazing. But there's also like, if I'm not interested in that, I just come in, I realize identity play and skip past it. Something like that.
Yeah.
I think let's keep reading. Anyone
I'll
read?
read.
Yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
read. All thoughts and feelings, irrespective of their content, whether they're pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, arise and pass away. Even our most intimate and treasured feelings are not always present, and something that is not always with us cannot be essential to us. For this reason, there is never any need to manipulate or get rid of any thought or feeling, but only to see clearly that our essential self or being is prior to and independent of thoughts and feelings. Our essential self has no need to be made independent through effort or practice. It is always and already inherently free. It is only necessary to recognize it as such. Whatever the character of any bodily sensation, none are present continuously. Sensations are always appearing, evolving, and disappearing in our experience. We do not, therefore, need to manipulate our experience of the body in any way. It is only necessary to recognize that our being is prior to and independent of the condition of the body. The same is true of our perceptions of the world, sights, sounds, tastes, textures, and smells. All of these appear, exist, evolve, and vanish. None are essential to us. Furthermore, no relationship is essential to us. No matter how intimate, none are indispensable. In fact, without reference to thought in this moment, one would have no knowledge of having or being in a relationship. This does not imply that relationship is not valid or desirable, but simply that our essential self or being is prior to and independent of it. Nor is any activity essential to us. Everything we do is pervaded by the sense of being myself. As we engage in an activity, we may become completely absorbed in or identified with it. But when it stops, our self or our being simply remains as it is always. Nothing ever happens to pure being. When I read this yesterday, I was really struck by the no relationship is essential to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I was kind of on this path of thinking that relationships are how we heal and how we grow and how we evolve, that we need relationships to journey this path, that we can't I'm sorry, I cannot get into heaven alone. Like I have to take my brothers and sisters with me. How can I do that if I'm not in relationship with anyone or anything? I get what Spira is saying in a sort of an intellectual way, but I've been on this path for a while and I've always come from this framework of all these people are my teachers. In ACIM, all relationships are equal. There is no special relationship, which I find to be a really helpful tool in my practice, is that everything's on this even playing field, but I need these teachers to know who I am, to grow and evolve as a spiritual being. So I'm curious what your thoughts are about that statement. No relationship is essential to us.
I definitely
Maybe
have thoughts
after all
about
of
it.
my work. What?
I definitely have thoughts about it.
Okay.
And I've been talking a lot, so I'll see if anybody else wants to speak about it first.
I think my one addendum was maybe after all my healing is accomplished, then no relationship is necessary. But while I'm wearing this suit, I feel my brothers and sisters are my teachers. They are reflections of me. But anyway, I'm wondering if he's coming from, and I'll give it up after this, but if it's after the evolution.
Yeah. Well, let me just say one thing, William, before you jump in, which is, again, I don't think that he's saying essential as necessary. I think he's saying essential as essence, which is inherently inseparable from being. So maybe that's something that's tripping you up, but yeah, William.
I was just going to ask, if your brothers and sisters are your teachers, what does that make you?
Student of life.
What does that make you to them? An eternal student? Are you not perhaps a teacher as well?
Well, I think of it as teacher learner. We learn from each other. It's like two sides of the same coin.
In some sense.
Yeah, I do see that model in a healing framework, but we're all essential to one another. And I appreciate BJ like extrapolating that. Maybe I was getting hung up on the word essential, like there's essential self and then there's essential necessary.
Yeah.
But I think we're all here to teach each other, to teach. We're in a teach learn model, right? Isn't that what's going on here? At least that's what I thought.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's what's going on here too. And I don't think that he's saying relationships aren't necessary. I think that what he's pointing to is, I guess in my words, we are already one. You and I are already one. So I think he's pointing to that oneness in the space between Caroline and BJ. That's essential, meaning inherent, ever present. The seemingness of BJ, Caroline, that changes, right? So it's not essential, meaning it comes and goes. Our relationship changes, it evolves. It's not essential in that way. It's not ever present. And yeah, so I don't think he's saying relationships aren't necessary. In other words, I think he's saying relationship is part of what comes and goes, what changes. The shared being is ever present, unchanging, and therefore essential. And that's what he means by essential essence. Yeah. And I absolutely agree with you. Like at Earth School, relationships are where it's at.
Yeah.
And I think he would agree too. Just putting words in his mouth, but yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Aaron, you're muted.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What I was saying was my sense is that it's just like you were saying earlier, BJ, a lot of the language that he uses to deliver his teachings are so crystallized. And I think there's a lot of intentionality around each word, like a technical, like there's a sort of technical purpose for it. It's very choiceful. And I think it's already been said, but I think that the essential, when he's using the word essential, it has a technical meaning, and it's like that which cannot be taken away. And the truth of the matter is our relationships can be taken away, and they are taken away from us, without our choice. It happens all the time. And so that's really the point I think he's conveying with this treatise on what is essential and what is not essential, rather than what is important or not important. That's the distinction that I get.
Yeah. Yeah, and just a little piece from Rupert's history. Part of his awakening experience happened when a relationship was taken away from him. He had been in a long-term romantic relationship at a young age, and it ended from his perspective suddenly. And there was an awakening experience there that he was like, I thought this was my happiness, or, you know, there was some part that he was like, I thought this was essential to me. I thought that we were doing a thing, and that he realized, oh, this can change. It drove him to find what is it that doesn't change, that can't be taken away.
Mm.
Just
I
very quickly
feel,
on
oh yeah, please go ahead.
on intentionality and directness. It's useful for me to remember as well that Rupert speaks in a question and answer format, and these words have been taken from that format and very carefully and thoughtfully put into this text. So there is when he answers a question so directly that there is an intentionality of that which is inherently missing from this, which is not, you know, a bad thing. It's just something worth bearing in mind, at least it seems to me.
Yeah. I feel drawn to reading another couple sections and then discussing some more.
Hmm.
Does that sound good?
Great.
Anyone interested or willing to read a section or two?
I can read.
Great. And then feel free to stop at the first section or keep going. If you stop, someone else can pick up.
Oh no, I'm on an e-book. What was the last sentence? What was the last sentence of where we stopped
Nothing
reading?
ever happens to
Nothing ever.
pure being.
Oh, good. What remains? What remains when we have let go of all thoughts, images, memories, feelings, sensations, perceptions, activities, and relationships? Our self alone remains, not an enlightened, higher, spiritual, special self, or a self that we have become through effort, practice, or discipline, but just the essential self or being that we always and already are before it is colored by experience. We are not manipulating experience, we are simply contemplating it. Nor is our self evolving. It is simply being seen clearly without the limitations it seems to have acquired from experience. Being is always in the same pristine condition. If we refer now to the feeling of being myself before it is colored by experience, and if we were to have visited the same experience at the age of 5, 10, 20, or 30, we would always have found the same self, the same unqualified being. Nothing happens to our being throughout the vicissitudes of life. Its nature is never tarnished or diminished by experience. It has simply been temporarily obscured. It's like undressing before going to bed at night. We take off everything that can be removed and our naked body remains. Our naked body is not created each time by undressing, it is simply revealed. Nor do we become our naked body when we take our clothes off. It was present throughout the day, though we may not have noticed it, covered as it was by layers of clothing. We return to our naked being in a similar way. In fact, we do not return to our being because we never truly left it. Our being never leaves itself. We take our being with us wherever we go. It is present in whatever we think, feel, or do. We simply undress. That is, we see clearly that our being lies beneath or behind all experience. Shall I go on?
If you'd like to.
Divested of the qualities it borrows from experience, our essential self or being is unconditioned and unlimited. Having no objective qualities, it cannot be defined or described in terms which have evolved to convey the content of objective experience. For all such language is tinged, to a greater or lesser extent, with the limitations inherent in this objectivity. The best we can do to describe a screen which has no color of its own, is to say what it is not. Not blue, not red, not green, not yellow, rather than what it is, and words such as transparent, colorless, and empty are simply attempts to convey this. So if we are to speak of our essential self or being, we have no choice but to make a concession and borrow words from ordinary language. Transparent, spacious, silent, still, peaceful, and fulfilled are meant to evoke the qualities of our essential being rather than describe it. Though even to suggest that our essential being has any qualities at all is itself a concession. Our thoughts may be agitated, but in their absence and even in their background when they are present, our essential self is devoid of any such quality. This absence of agitation is referred to as peace, and thus peace is said to be inherent in our being. We may feel a sense of lack, but prior to and in the background of any such feeling, our essential self knows no lack, and we call the absence of lack happiness. Thus, our being is said to be happiness itself. The terms peace and happiness do not describe feelings or emotions in the normal sense of the words. They are the very nature of ourself in the absence of the limitations we seem to acquire from experience. As soon as our self or being disentangles itself from the adventure of experience and returns to itself, it recognizes or tastes itself again as it essentially is. That taste is happiness itself.
And let's just be with that for a moment. And what do you notice? Aaron.
The statement, nor is our self evolving. From the paragraph is, we are not manipulating experience, we are simply contemplating it. Nor is our self evolving. It is simply being seen clearly without the limitations it seems to have acquired from experience. So, yeah, I mean, maybe this is one of these points in the material where there's something about that statement that's kind of coming from a Q&A, kind of like you said, William, like maybe there's some context here that's missing, but that was really stimulating or catalyzing for me to read that. And I was like, I mean, in the context of this contemplation of this chapter of this, the naked self, and that it never changes, it certainly would imply that if it never changes, it never evolves. But that's very challenging for me because I believe that evolution occurs. So if it's not the self that evolves, then what is it that evolves?
Which self?
Like if it's not the essential, if it's not being myself, the self that is myself, the sense of what is essential to me, I think he's saying that doesn't evolve. That's how I take what was, what he wrote there. And it kind of, on one level, it just lands and like, okay, I can sort of see that, but then I'm like, well, hang on. If the self doesn't evolve, what evolves? I'm a little bit lost because it's a pretty deep part of my worldview is that evolution does occur. So what does it occur in or upon if it's not the self?
So again, I have thoughts, and I'm happy for other people.
I want to
jump
hear
in
your
first.
thoughts.
Okay. Do you want to hear my thoughts first, or leave a little space for somebody else?
I have no no preference.
Go.
Okay, I'll go.
Yeah.
That's something that I wonder about as well. And what I think evolves is identity. And identity is often what we think that we are, and it's what we get the opportunity to seem as though we are. And I think Earth School is an integrity game, and what we're here to do is align our identity, our sense of who we are, our sense of self, with reality, which is the truth of who we are. So I think we're evolving identity, which in some ways is our story. We keep evolving our story until it matches reality.
And in that context, what you're describing like personal evolution, how souls evolve, right? Like at a personal level.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, because like doing, preparing for this study group, I'm like reading ahead and pondering and making notes and, precognating on all of this. And one of the things that's come up for me is the reminder of Eckhart Tolle's journey of like one of the keys to his awakening was he had this statement that he said to himself, I can't live with myself any longer. And it's similar to what you said, William. When he said that to himself and he realized, I can't live with myself any longer, there's an I and a myself.
Yeah.
So which is the self that I can't, there's wait, who is I that can't wait? Like, and then that just sort of like broke his brain in a way. I don't think he says it that way. But he was able to step out of the story of myself for long enough and significantly enough that the story of myself was able to stop being sort of enlivened. The story of myself was no longer borrowing its existence, to sort of put this in Rupert's terms, for long enough that story deflated on its own, because the story needs our investment. We need to be invested into the story and interested in the story for it to stay alive. And that's something that I find over and over in inquiry. It's like, if I'm not interested in a story anymore, it falls away by itself. So yeah, I think it's identity, story, the seeming sense of self.
So as a follow-up question, what does it mean for identity to evolve? What does that mean to you?
I think that's part of, what we're here for, like what I learned from you through Walter Russell is there's these two parallel desires of the creator, which is to be all of it or one, and to seemingly take form. So I think we're interested in taking form to go through all of these different experiences and learn about oneness again. We end up learning about truth because you can't really escape it, even if you try to go the negative path, seems like, well, it all comes back. So yeah, I think it's to have an adventure, like I think at some point, maybe it's in this chapter. Oh no, I think it was last chapter. He said, at some point we must have the courage to come back from the adventure. There it is. Sooner or later, we must have the clarity and courage to return from the adventure of experience and come back to ourselves. So I think that identifying is the adventure of experience. It's like, I want to go out and do something. And, like to look at Little Soul in the Sun, that book, like the little soul was like, I want to learn about forgiveness. And in order to learn about forgiveness, I must be betrayed. And in that way, I'm interested in being betrayed. That's part of my adventure. Someone come in and hurt me real bad so I can forgive them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind just clarifying a little bit what I might not do a good job of it. I didn't necessarily mean to point out that there was context missing from this. That may be the case, but it was more that, but not really. It's more that when Rupert addresses a person's question, in answering it, he sees where that person's coming from and undresses things in a particular direction for that person. And that directionality is an interesting thing to consider. It's not that I think that that is missing from this and important, but something about it is interesting. That's all.
Yeah.
No, it didn't do a good job.
That makes sense. Yeah, I've heard him say a similar thing about like someone's asking a question and he listens for long enough. It's as though they're lost in the woods and he listens for long enough to identify where they are. And then he gives them direction based on where they are. So we're missing, if he is answering questions, which he doesn't always, sometimes he just gives a teaching. But yeah, if we're missing the question, we've lost sort of like that orientation of like, what were they? Who's he talking to? What's he orienting towards? Yeah, Aaron.
14 minutes left and a few pages still to read.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So shall we continue? Amanda, do you feel like reading?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I think we have 2 sections left. Do you want to read the last 2?
Yeah. Just as an actor dresses up, assumes the thoughts and feelings of a character in a play, and seems to become that character, without ever actually ceasing to be an actor, so our essential being clothes itself in the qualities of experience and seems to become a temporary, finite self without ever actually ceasing to be eternal, infinite awareness. Imagine an actor named John Smith who is playing the part of King Lear. John Smith leads a peaceful and fulfilled life. Every night he leaves home, goes to the theater, puts on his costume, and adopts King Lear's thoughts and feelings. One night, the play begins as usual, and King Lear starts arguing with his daughters. But as the play develops, he becomes increasingly involved in the drama to such an extent that at some point he forgets that he is John Smith and seems actually to become King Lear. John Smith believes and feels, I am King Lear. The moment that thought and feeling take hold of him, his suffering begins. The play comes to an end, but he forgets to revert to John Smith. So lost is he in the drama of experience. When a friend comes to his dressing room to congratulate him, he finds King Lear miserable. Why are you miserable? His friend inquires. That was wonderful. King Lear responds, I'm miserable because of my relationship with Cordelia and the war with France. Understanding his predicament, his friend says, no, you are miserable because you have forgotten who you are. Who are you really? King Lear replies, I am the father of 3 daughters and the King of England. No, that is not who you really are, the friend exclaims. Who are you before you are a father or a king? Go back deeper into yourself. So King Lear starts describing his thoughts and feelings, and again his friend says, No, these thoughts and feelings are not essential to you. They are not always with you. Who are you prior to your thoughts and feelings? King Lear goes deeper and deeper into himself, discarding his relationships, activities, thoughts, feelings, history, and conditioning, until everything that is not essential to him has gone, and he stands revealed, unqualified by any experience. Very quietly, he says, "I am John Smith." At that moment, his suffering disappears. Just as the recognition, "I am John Smith," is the revelation of King Lear's essential self, the clear seeing of our naked being is the recognition of ourself, not something we once knew but have since forgotten, but the recollection of something that is present now and always known, but usually ignored or overlooked. It is the revelation of our essential, irreducible nature before it is obscured by experience. And with this revelation, peace and happiness are restored. In fact, everyone knows their own being or has the experience of being myself at every moment of experience. No one's knowledge of their self can ever be completely obscured by the content of experience. Even in our darkest moments, we still have the sense of being myself. The sense of being myself never leaves us because it is us and we cannot leave ourself. Everything apart from ourself may take its leave of us, but ourself cannot leave itself, just as, relatively speaking, we cannot step out of our body. We can step out of our clothes, but not our body. Just as we take our naked body with us wherever we go, even though it is usually covered by clothes, so we take our naked being with us whatever we do, even though it is usually obscured by experience. And just as it is not necessary to undress in order to feel our naked body, it is not necessary to change the content of experience in any way in order to be in touch with our innate peace and happiness.
Let's just again have a moment of silence. And what stands out to you from that, from those two passages?
I'm having a small moment with everything apart from ourself may take its leave of us, but ourself cannot leave itself. I'm just kind of like, yay.
Yeah. And what is that yay about?
Something about that sentence perhaps brings me in touch with that essential underlying happiness. And so when he says that our self cannot leave itself, it's like, oh, good, this happiness can't leave itself. Like, always this, good.
I love that. I'm gonna give you a little celebration horn.
Yeah. Like, thank you, body. Thank you, drama. Oh, when we're done, but this, good.
Yeah, piggybacking off of that line there, William. So I resonate with what you said. he says, even in our darkest moments, we still have the sense of being myself. The sense of being myself never leaves us because it is us. And we cannot leave ourselves. Honestly, I never thought about that. I completely resonate with that statement, but it's not one I've ever pondered, like leaving myself.
Yeah.
But even in our darkest moments, I think there is the birth of who am I and the knowing of spirit or our eternal nature. We all have that. I think of it as like his beautiful reference here of the body and the clothes. I've always thought about it as a window that's dirty, and I'm just wiping the dirt off the window until it becomes clear, you know. Yeah, William, thank you, because I feel you there. You know, it's nice. Mhm.
Yeah, me too. I feel that. I feel that sense of for me, it feels like a sense of reassurance. And also with the very last paragraph, it is not necessary to change the content of experience in any way in order to be in touch with our innate peace and happiness. Like, it's just so reassuring. It's just so like, oh my gosh, can it really be that simple?
Yeah.
And I just really appreciate that so much.
I remember hearing that statement. I think Muji said this: joy is our natural state. I had a long, hard unpacking of that one because I'm like, what does that mean? I did a lot of self-inquiry into figuring out what exactly does that mean to me. And I kind of looked at it as joy is the I am presence. Everything we put on top of that through experience and through roles and shifts and all these things that change obscures that natural state. But as source, we are joy eternal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our birthright.
Yeah.
Joy is our birthright, just like freedom. But there was a lot of self-inquiry into that topic. But there are things that are worth unpacking, you know.
Yeah.
I never have to make myself feel joy. I'm already there. What I've done is I've taken things down a few notches through experience.
Yeah.
I must return to the truth of my natural state.
Must is a strong word.
I know. It's a word that I think it's part of my being a teacher for so many years. I don't know. The analytical brain sometimes gives me a little swift kick. Yeah, must is a little harsh, but that's
Well, if it
my,
works for you, you know.
it works for me. I must.
Mhm.
It helps.
I've used to follow on from your dirty window, I've used muddy goggles for myself. And there's another analogy I use, which in some sense can be helpful for me, is carrying suitcases. So, because the muddy goggles and the dirty window implies that, oh, there's cleaning to do and like there's so much muck to get through. But sometimes I use I'm carrying suitcases. I've got these layers of experience and I'm determined to carry them. When I see it that way, that makes me feel like the task of putting them down is perhaps easier than cleaning an indefinitely muddied window. Just a thing.
Anything you care to share, Amanda?
I I was having an experience this morning. This is what it reminds me of. An experience this morning in meditation and I've been, I think, just really restless and agitated and having a hard time with meditation in general lately. And I was having an experience this morning when I was sitting there and I had the grace to like just to welcome in the agitation and welcome in the restlessness. And I was like almost like just wanting to hug it all, like, come here restlessness, come here agitation, just like bring it all in, and then in doing that, like I just felt more of myself return to my body in this really beautiful way. And I don't know why I said that, but it felt related somehow.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah. It seems like that essential beingness for me, I am able to access it always, but it's almost like it's like, for me, it's like, what am I pushing? Like, I always feel like I'm pushing parts of my experience away. And then in pushing the parts of my experience away, then like, as soon as I remember, oh, stop pushing everything away, then all of a sudden I get to experience my beingness again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me that kind of brings us full circle back to the meditation of like, when the mind is empty, there's space. And that's kind of what I get in touch with in hearing that, like our essential beingness is spacious.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's room for everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So I could keep going for another hour and a half. And that's our time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for being
Yeah.
here.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
Rupert, and whoever inspired it, Rupert.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is lovely. Thank you all so much for sharing this
Yeah.
time, conversation, and introspection. Really nice.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
BJ, for
PJ.
your wonderful facilitation as always.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So we'll do chapter 3 for next week.
Chapter 3 next week.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye-bye.